let's talk about key signatures and the circle of fourths or the circle of fifths, depending on how you read it. Last time we talked about building major scales using intervals of a whole step and a half step. So if you recall, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. We'll build our major scale. We'll use C as an example. Or again, whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. While you can build every major scale intervallically, whether it's C or D flat or E or whatever, that's probably not the fastest way to do it. So what we're going to be using today primarily is going to be the circle of fourths to figure out our key signatures. And this is a better way to sort of memorize your keys, memorize those major scales. And it saves a bit of time as opposed to building every single step of every scale intervallically and then memorizing it by rote, because there is a pattern using the circle of fourths and circle of fifths. So let's go ahead and talk about what is the circle of fourths, circle of fifths. Here's a quick picture. It's called the circle of fourths because moving in this direction, this counterclockwise direction, going from C to F is a fourth. So let's go ahead and demonstrate that. Moving from C to F, 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the interval of a fourth, or a perfect fourth. So as we continue moving around the circle, F to B flat, 1, 2, 3, 4. We get another perfect fourth. So moving this direction, it's called the circle of fourths. And if we keep going, B flat to E flat, is another fourth. E flat to A flat, another fourth. A flat to D flat, I'll change octaves. And then D flat to G flat. You can see that distance of a perfect fourth, and you can hear it moving from step to step. If we keep going around, G flat to B, B to E, E to A to D, D to G, and finally G to C. Now when you play through this progression, it's got kind of a particular sound. And that's what we'd call the line of fourths or the fourths progression. So I'm sure a lot of you guys have learned this as the circle of fifths as well, because if you notice this pattern, and we talked about interval inversions last time, if you reverse that perfect fourth and go the opposite direction, to invert your interval, you'll end up with a perfect fifth. So if we go from C to G, moving this clockwise direction, it's going to be called the circle of fifths because we go in this other direction. So going from C, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we get the fifth, G to D. All right, and I'll spare you the rest of the circle here. But that pattern will remain. So the line of fifths would sound something like this. Where am I? There we go. So that's called the line of fifths or the fifths progression. So for jazz theory, we're going to be most interested in that counterclockwise fourths progression motion. And the reason for this is, more often than not, chords tend to move in a fourths sort of motion. So the most common type of chord progression we have is called a 2-5-1 progression. We'll get into that a little bit later. But if you look at the roots, D, G, C, it's moving from D to G to C, but moving in that general direction. So here's that chord progression. And that's the most common chord progression in jazz. Or, if we're talking about some other dominant chain, this is a really common sound to move from chord to chord to chord, moving in a fourth motion if we have just a chain of dominants, starting with C dominant, F dominant. Again, we're going counterclockwise from C to B flat dominant, to E flat, A flat, to D flat, to G flat, to B, to E, whoa, let's try that again, and to A, to D, to G, and then back home to C. So that's a very common chord progression. So what I'd like you guys to memorize is just C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, B, E, A, D, G, C. Little pattern for memorizing this is the bead, the bead gk. So B, E, A, D, G, that's bead, G flat, and then bead, G, C, in terms of memorizing. So you want to be able to start anywhere in the circle. E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, B, E, A, D, G, C, F, B flat, that would be completing the circle from this direction or starting anywhere just to be able to recognize that line of force. That's something you want to try and memorize. So the reason we use, so that's how this circle is kind of constructed with our 12 pitches. Think like a clock, with midnight being C in terms of like putting it, sort of tattooing this image into your brain. We use the circle of force to memorize major scales because in the key of C we have 0, flats, and sharps. Now if we build that major scale starting from F, we could of course go whole, whole, half, whole, 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 half. However, it's probably not going to come out quite that quick. So we use this circle of force to memorize our key signatures. So C has 0 sharps and 0 flats. F, if you look at it and listen to it, there's 1 flat, B flat. Otherwise, it has all the white notes, just like C. So, we have 0 flats. When we get to the key of F, we have 1 flat. When we get to the key of B flat, the pattern will continue. We'll have 2 flats. So again, those 2 flats would be B flat and E flat. I'm not counting this B flat because that's the same piece of octave information, or same pitch information, I should say. So 0 flats, 0 sharps, 1 flat, 2 flats, 3 flats, 4 flats, 5 flats, 6 flats. This is also written down as F sharp, and then we'll come at it from the other direction so you can see what's happening. When you go this circle of fifths direction, it's going to be, instead of flats, we're going to add sharps. So this is, again, C major, 0 sharps, 0 flats. When you go to G, just like when you went in the circle of force direction, you got a B flat, the first flat. When you go to G, we get our first sharp, which is in this case F sharp. And when we go from C to G to D, 0, 1 sharp, D will have 2 sharps. In this case, it's F sharp and C sharp. There's that first, and C sharp. So, to memorize your key signatures and to help memorize scales, the flats and sharps, there's a real specific pattern to them. So I'm going to switch images here. Let's see. There we go. And this is going to show us a little bit closer what the heck is going on. So let's zoom in for a second. So on the inside of the circle, it says how many flats or sharps are in each different key. And if it's just 1 flat, you can assume all the other notes besides this B flat are going to be white notes. So F's got 1 flat and it's B flat. Now when we go to 2 flats, you don't have to memorize 2 different pieces of information because each key, if you look closely at the key signatures, they build off of each other. So F has 1 flat, that B flat right there. If we move to the key of B flat, it's going to have 2 flats. And notice it starts with that same flat. It's the same as the key before, and then adds 1 other flat, in this case E flat. Of course, each scale starts on the root, like B flat, the root, E flat, etc., etc. When we go to the key of E flat with 3 flats, we're going to have 3 flats. But you don't have to memorize 3 new flats, because if you learned B flat or memorized B flat's information, that information will be repeated, B flat, E flat, B flat, E flat, and then the 3rd flat will follow it afterwards. So When you check out this circle of force and looking at our flats as they grow in the key signature, you might notice another pattern. The other reason this is called the circle of force, let's back up a second, is because our flats, B flat, and E flat, well, let's start with that B flat. And the distance between B flat and E flat is also a fourth within this fourth pattern. If we go to the next key, E flat, B flat, E flat, A flat. So here's B flat to E flat, a fourth, and then E flat to A flat. Aha, another fourth. So it's really helpful, again, to memorize this line of fourths because it doesn't just help you learn how many numbers of flats and sharps are in different keys, but it also helps you learn what the flats and sharps actually are. So, again, in the key of F, we have B flat only. In the key of B flat, we have B flat and E flat. In the key of E flat, we have three, B flat, E flat, and A flat. And if we keep going around the flat side, that pattern's going to continue. Similarly, for the sharp side, let's zoom in over here. Our first sharp, going from C to G, we got C, 0 flats, 0 sharps. When we go from C to G a fifth away, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, circle of fifths, we get our first sharp, which is going to be F sharp in the key of G. There it is. We have one sharp, and it's going to be F sharp. As you add sharps, just like we are moving in the circle, here we were adding up going by fourths. Because we're moving in the opposite direction for sharps, you're going to add your sharps by, they'll be sort of adding on at the interval of fifths. So we go to the next key, D major, which has two sharps. It's going to be F sharp and C sharp. That's what we're seeing right here. And the distance between F sharp and C sharp, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, is also going to be a fifth. And just like on the flat side where we built off of them, same thing happens on the sharp side. 0 flats and sharps are one sharp. It's F sharp. When you go to learn the next key in the step, D, you don't have to memorize two new sharps because one of them will just come from the previous key. Key of D has an F sharp because G before it had a sharp. And beyond that F sharp, you can always find the next sharp by just going up a fifth. So I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and keep it zoomed in here. See the pattern continue. A borrows the first two sharps from D major and adds a third, that G sharp up top. And don't mind that piano keyboard, it's showing it as A flat, but G sharp and harmonically the same thing. So in the key of A, we have three sharps. And the distance between C sharp to G sharp is also going to be a fifth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we get that fifth in between. Without pulling back, think about the key of E for a second. We are going to have, of course, these three sharps, and then we're going to have another sharp, and you're going to find it by going a fifth above G. So you can count it out on your fingers. Don't be ashamed. Let's take it back to kindergarten. G, A, B, C, D. So in the key of E, our next sharp is going to be a D sharp. Let's double check it. Never hurts. Yep, I see F sharp, C sharp, G sharp. Same three sharps as the key of A, but since we're on the fourth step of the circle, we're going to add that D sharp. And we get F sharp, G sharp, A, B, C sharp, D sharp, E. Now, you notice when you do an ascending scale that these sharps don't fall in order, obviously, because we start with that E, then we have F sharp, which happens to be the first one, and then G sharp, which is the third sharp in there. So when it comes to the order of sharps, whenever you write them on a key signature, you want to write them out in their order. So this is sort of shown properly. You would never write F sharp, G sharp, and then C sharp, because that doesn't show the fifths pattern. So F sharp to C sharp is an ascending fifth, or when you look at this key signature, it's a descending fourth, right? Or you can look at it as the fifth. Again, because those intervals will interchange and always equals 9. 4 plus 5 equals 9. But that's how you build your keys and key signatures. So, to review, here's our whole key signature. And it's worth noting that down here, if we think 1 flat, 2 flat, 3 flat, 4 flat, 5 flat, 6 flat, it's makes sense to memorize up to 6 flats or up to 6 sharps. And I notice on this circle goes up to 7, so we'll go ahead and use this. But there's overlaps because 6 sharps and 6 flats happen to be the same thing. If we think of the key of G flat, again, ignore this notation stuff happening over here, but just listen to it. I'll speak in these key names. So in the key of G flat, we have G flat, A flat, B flat, C flat. Again, it looks a lot like B, but we'll call it C flat, D flat, E flat, F, G flat. And enharmonically, those 6 flats are the same as these 6 sharps. F sharp, G sharp, A sharp, B natural, C sharp, D sharp, E sharp, which looks a lot like F, remember, E sharp, and then finally F sharp in our octave. So these are enharmonic keys. That's kind of what they're showing down here. 7 sharps is the same as 5 flats. The key of C sharp, where everything is sharp, is the same as D flat, which only has 5 flats, or the 5 black keys. So this is like a piano player favorite key for this reason. You can call that D flat or C sharp, and harmonically they are equivalent pitches in our 12-tone equal temperament system. If you're using something besides equal temperament, then that might change, but for right now we'll keep it kind of simple. All right, so I think that covers the circle of fourths, how this is constructed. Again, moving in this direction, the roots of our scales, C, F, B flat, 0, 1 flat, 2 flat, moving in fourth intervals, F, B flat, E flat. And then when you go in the circle of fifths, moving with fifth intervals, C, G, D, A, C, D, E, F, G, double check, G, A, B, C, D. Yep, we're good. So you can build those intervals moving around like that. Now when it comes to their key signatures, knowing that C has 0 flats, 0 sharps, F has 1 flat, and it's going to always be B flat is the first flat. When we want to figure out we have 2 flats, oh crap, I forgot what the next flat is. You can always find it by just going, well, the first flat is B flat. B, C, D, E. Oh snap, it's going to be B flat and E flat for 2 flats. And, even if you're trying to do D flat over here with 5 flats, you can always figure out what the order of flats are by using your circle of fourths. Well, the first flat is B flat, second flat will be E flat, the third flat will be A flat, fourth flat will be D flat, and then the fifth flat would be G flat. Let's double check it. B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat. Yep, and in fact, if you look at it, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat. So the only notes in D flat major that aren't flatted are going to be F and C because there's no F or C covered in here. Whoops, that's not what I meant to do. So D flat major has these 5 flat keys in it, or all the black keys essentially is another way of thinking of it. Again, F and C are not flatted. So, again, 5 flats, D flat, E flat, F natural, G flat, A flat, B flat, C natural, D flat. And that's how you build your major scales using your circle of fourths. Truthfully, just memorizing this basic circle is going to be paramount because this helps you not only figure out how many flats and sharps, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 flats, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sharps, but also helps you figure out the order of the sharps and flats. So in the key of, A major, there are 0, 1, 2, 3 sharps. And the first sharp is always F sharp. So we can figure out, oh, in the key of A major, I'm going to have 3 sharps. It'll be F sharp, C sharp, and G sharp. So that hopefully helps with the circle of fourths, circle of fifths. And again, I would like you guys to memorize this thinking in the fourths progression because more often than not, you're going to have your chords moving in fourth motion. All right, that covers it for circle of fourths, circle of fifths, and how to find your key signatures.